It is a form of communication. You have to remember that you are writing for someone else and that you might have all the ideas. The book is you communicating that idea, and they have to get the same thing that you want them to get. A bit of manipulation involved, like trick a person into thinking maybe this character died or maybe something really bad is going to happen. You have to finesse it a little bit. Hi, I'm Kyle Lawrence, creator and writer of ICHI and Crumple, a collection of 2 short stories. You can find me at Hail King Rex on YouTube. I do a comics-based YouTube channel, and I also have made some comics of my own. And you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We're joined today by a multi-talented individual. He has an amazing YouTube channel that reviews comics as well as film and a bunch of other geeky stuff. So he's a perfect guest to have on our show. He is also an author and a writer of 2 amazing series. One is called ICHI and the other is called Crumple. We're joined by the ever-talented...
Hi.
We're joined by the ever-talented Kyle Lawrence. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I would have been better if the coffee hadn't kicked in yet. For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
I'm a writer. I primarily started out writing comic scripts and working with artists to do short stuff. I'm featured in some anthologies from places like Oneshi Press and SourcePoint, Back from the Depths. I've also crowdfunded one of my own series called Roar Rabbit in the Jazz Age. It's 2 issues in, and I'm working on a 3rd now. But what I'm here to talk about today is a short story collection of mine called ICHI and Crumple. It's 2 short stories, both about choices and their consequences, and it's prose instead of comics, but many of them did start out as comic book scripts.
That's awesome. I love it. So what are the pros and cons of being a geek in today's age?
Well, I guess the pro is that the stuff is everywhere. There's comic book movies and shows, and fantasy and anime is huge now. I guess just one of the downsides is that there's often too much of it. And sometimes you get the term geek slop, where they're kind of just churning it out. I know a lot of people aren't very happy with a lot of Marvel's recent output,
Sure, yeah.
especially in like the movie form.
Yeah. As an author now, writing your own stories here, and the fact that you've already written for some amazing anthologies. SourcePoint has a bunch of amazing comics in their stable. I've interviewed them a bunch on the show as well too in the past. But as an author yourself, how are you trying to push yourself going prose?
Originally, I kind of started doing prose, honestly, because I had a lot of free time at work.
Okay.
And also, budgets are getting really tight. The economy is getting harder. So hiring artists is just a bigger ask. I'd written some prose before, some poetry and stuff. So I figured, why don't I take one of my comic scripts, make it into some prose and see where that goes.
So as a prose writer, though, I know there's a big difference between from prose to page when it comes to comic panels. Are you inundated with the fact that you have so much space to work with now when it comes to writing your stories, or are you just trying to keep it as tight as you would to making your own comics?
I guess because, and let me clarify, I write scripts. I don't do art.
Right.
So comics would always be a collaborative process for me. So a lot of it is me putting my intention into the script and then having a artist translate it. Part of that is having to let the artist do their own thing and trust them that they are professionals. With prose, it's pretty much all me. I can just splatter it all on the page. I have infinite time, infinite space. Google Docs don't cost any money.
Yeah.
So I could make 500 pages or 5,000 pages and it's exactly the same cost. Yeah, it's definitely a lot more freeing. Still, in my free time, if I had to choose, I would choose comic books to read over books. And I would love to get more into the comic industry one day. But right now, prose is working out for me.
Diving into your short stories here with ICHI and Crumple, talk about that process, how the idea formed for ICHI. What was that process like for you from comic script to prose, and why was it an important story for you to tell?
With ICHI, I think mainly the idea was sort of the idea of like well-intentioned domino effects and things that go wrong. I just sort of had that on my mind. I think at the time I was kind of doing a writing class and it was one of these prompts, something about like a sports robot. I kind of forget. It was a couple of years ago now. Eventually it just developed into this idea of like, well, baseball used to be this big American pastime. It's still big, but I think football has overtaken it. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not a sports guy, but I kind of had this idea of like, well, what if they tried to spruce up the game to bring more people in? But when you bring someone in and you bring in new things, the game changes. So things change. So this idea of ICHI the robot, bringing in this robot who plays baseball, which is like this stunning marvel of technology. But then if you bring in one robot, then the other team has to compete with their robot. And then they have to compete with that. And then there's more robots. And then there's just more and more that changes. And it's sort of a ship of Theseus sort of thing. You change out everything. It's not the same thing anymore. And that's part of what goes through Ichi's head and goes into the choice he makes by the end of the story.
Nice. I like that. To keep you up to date on the sports side of things, they're already doing an automatic strike zone where players can actually challenge an umpire now. So they're on that verge of basically eliminating umpires eventually.
Cool. Most of that was gibberish to me, but okay.
Technology is advancing just as you're describing it, basically, is what I'm trying to say in sporting. And I think it comes down to how do you enjoy entertainment when technology starts coming into play?
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting side of what you're trying to convey here.
Yeah, I think technology is coming in so many different ways. I mean, already like betting sites, that's one big thing that is majorly affecting games because people are starting saying, well, what if one of the players or the umpires puts in a bet like, oh, this person's going to go down in this round and then you get rigged. And that's not new. I mean, how many movies are there about the boxer has to go down in a certain round? This isn't new. It's just a new technology to make it easier. So it's just a big problem and it affects everything.
I'm glad you dived into it with your particular story, not the betting side of things, but technology and the advancement of sports. But talk about Crumple here itself. What is that based on and why is that an important story?
I'd say Crumple is kind of the meat of the book. It's the longest story and it's the one that I think is the most passionate, it's most fleshed out. Its origin was in a nightmare I had. I was just wandering through this like big house with someone and I turned around and there's just this big wall in front of me and I can hear the person screaming from inside of it. So that was the inspiration.
Are you okay?
Most days.
You've been in anthologies, you've been a writer in many different formats here. Why do you like writing? What drives you to become a writer?
Honestly, I just enjoy it. Just naturally enjoy piecing stories together. I'm a huge consumer of media. Like I play video games, I read comics, I read books, I watch TV show, I watch anime, I listen to music. I mean, usually whenever my friends need like a media recommendation, they come to me because I'm just kind of this like black hole that wants to just absorb everything. Like I wish I could clone myself so that I could watch like 3 different shows at once and read a couple different books, you know?
The same for me. Well, like when I watch Jeopardy, I have all this useless knowledge stored up in my head. And, I started answering off these questions and my folks are like, how do you know this stuff? I go, I just a bunch of useless knowledge up here. It's great for trivia night.
Yeah. But I think sometimes that useless knowledge, sometimes it comes together in ways you don't expect. And I think that's part of the fun of writing a story is combining all these weird, disparate ideas that don't seem like they should fit. But when you make them fit, it feels really satisfying. Like Crumple is basically like a haunted house story, but with a time machine. And there's also mythological elements. And it kind of has the vibe of, you ever see the movie Jumanji?
Oh, yeah.
Where the house just starts getting like overrun with floods and vines. Like that was also kind of going through my head while I wrote this.
What has been the reaction for either your beta tester readers? I'd love to hear that type of feedback.
Well, it's not available for purchase yet. So that's coming in June. But in terms of feedback, because I started as a comic script, so I actually went on this group called Comics Experience, and it's they're still around in certain forms, and they help me develop the script, work out, how do the characters connect? Does this pay off? Does that pay off? What are the themes? What are the this and that?
Getting that type of feedback obviously is extremely important for any profession, but especially as a writer yourself here. Were there like tips that you learned that you didn't realize that improved your writing that you were just making mistakes on?
Sometimes when you're writing, you have to remember that you are writing for someone else and that you might have all the ideas. You have a fully formed idea in your head. The book is you communicating that idea. It is a form of communication, and they have to get the same thing that you want them to get. There's a little bit of almost like a bit of manipulation involved, where you kind of have to like make a person, like trick a person into thinking maybe this character died or maybe something really bad is going to happen, and then trick them with that. You have to kind of like finesse it a little bit.
As a writer, though, especially if you're putting yourself into these stories, as we all do in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a film, script, or comic, or as in a book here, do you find that you fall back into, say, old habits or old styles of writing that you said, I will never go back to this type of genre or this type of theme again?
I guess, I do have some themes that I do like to play on. I usually like to have a little bit of like a mythological element in the background. Was at one point very much into the occult, so I studied up on religions and old mythologies and like bizarre like ritual practices. It was very fun. So I usually have a lot of that littered in the back. Crumple is exactly the same way. I think there's like a very straightforward version of the story, but if you pay attention to a lot of like the things that are mentioned, some of the decor and the symbols that are plastered throughout, and you understand some of the mythology behind it, you'll get a higher level concept of what's going on.
So was there a medium that gravitated you towards writing? Was it a certain book or movie or anime that you said, this is what I want to write, or this is why I want to become a writer?
Originally would have been anime. I mean, I've loved anime since I was a kid. I grew up in the 90s, so that was when kids anime was coming in. So I grew up with Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Naruto, Bleach, all of these things. I would love to do anime, but one, I don't live in Japan. Two, I'm very bad at art. And three, that's very expensive. You have to start moving back down. So manga, no, but then I got into American comics. Actually, I got into it much later than everything else. I was always like a superhero fan. I loved like the DC animated universe and all that. But I started reading American comics and I really started to enjoy them. It's very different than manga. There's often just different tropes, different ideas are put on. And I thought, I can do this. I can write. I can do this.
Well, then that must have transitioned over into your YouTube channel, obviously. So you know what you love what you do, share it with others.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always have a lot of ideas in my head and I like to talk and yap. So YouTube channel is perfect for me.
How did that come about? For Two Geeks Talking, for me, I was with a friend. We were working on webcomics.com. He was creating the website, and it was a database collection of webcomics. And I said, well, we have this collection of these amazing comics. We should do interviews with them. We should create a podcast. Before that phrase is now inundated with every other podcast out there currently. And so we started doing the show itself. So was that the same for you when it came to the YouTube channel? Was I have all of this knowledge, all this information. I'm a pretty funny guy. I enjoy talking about this stuff. Like, how did the YouTube channel come about?
It was a lot like that. I had all this information and, I like watching YouTube. I like watching people talk about stuff. One thing that I did notice with a lot of comic book channel stuff on YouTube is a lot of it is very dry. It often feels like someone is reading a Wikipedia page to you. It's like, here is this character. They did this. They were created here. And, I'm not going to knock anyone who makes that kind of content or watches that kind of content. I watch that content and I've made that kind of content. But when I go to other stuff like anime or TV shows or movies or books, you get these like huge video essays of people giving these like really thoughtful pieces about like, how this connects to like World War II or something, or like how it's like a queer coded messaging. And I feel like there's a lot of that lacking in comic book spaces, which is kind of a shame because when people talk about like, deep comic books, you get names like, Alan Moore and Mouse and all these kinds of things, but there are like dozens of those kinds of people. There are dozens of Alan Moores out there that never get any recognition.
Right.
Partly is because comics are flooded with superhero content. It's the bread and butter.
Right.
And superheroes are, notoriously pretty straightforward. Not all of it, but that's how it goes. Whenever I make a YouTube video, I like to have some sort of angle to it, either about maybe like how the production of a comic book went awry and it messed up the story, or some sort of story about how the author went down a weird rabbit hole. I have this very long video covering the entirety of Frank Miller's Dark Knight saga, which goes from everything from the first Dark Knight all the way to like the fifth book that he did a couple years ago called The Golden Child,
Oh, wow.
and about how Frank Miller really started off with these very reactionary tendencies. Like if you read The Dark Knight now, honestly, it reads like The Birth of a Nation, the KKK film. The more I went into Frank Miller's life, I started to realize he was a victim of a mugging, and he grew up in like the crime explosion, and all of this kind of influenced him and affected him, and he put things on the page. But jump forward to today, he has like reversed all that. He doesn't believe in that stuff. He was basically saying like, I really didn't know what I was talking about back then. I had a lot of problems. He was also dealing with alcoholism. That's a big thing. Yeah. It's like, one is I like to talk about comics, but also doing these videos gives me more information about people's lives and experiences, and you get like just a bigger, broader understandings of how things came to be. So instead of just making this basic video about like, here's why the Dark Knight is fascist, it's more like, here's the weird trail that an author went through with Batman, and about how it's affected writing, and about how a lot of people fall into these traps.
Sure. I also find it interesting because I've had a few DC and Marvel writers on the show, like Paul Cooperberg is my more recent one that I can recall off the top of my head. His information about how the multiverse was created and how certain editors would go to bat for certain writers and artists, and how he was collecting these stories and all that other stuff. I thought that was a rather interesting deep dive for an industry that I think a lot of us didn't know about, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. When I'm sure that was a wild time to be part of Marvel or DC or both for that matter. But understanding that the history of these people is a really good thing to have, because if you don't recognize the name, you're not going to know what they've contributed to the comics you know and love. And I think that's a good thing that you're putting together on the channel.
Like you said, there was like a lack of documentation for comic books back then. They just weren't taken as seriously. And it's a shame, because there are so many major popular things today and so much American culture that comes directly from comic books. Yeah. Even stuff like He-Man comes directly out of Jack Kirby. The recent comic book boom, obviously with the comic book movies, they are just all over the place. You wouldn't have The Boys. True. You wouldn't have anything like that. Yeah, it's just comic books are massively influential, and I think they should be treated much better as a medium. They should be treated as legitimate literature. Yeah. To
be perfectly honest, I mean, you see them nowadays in English classes. You see a lot of comic creators these days are gearing their content towards the young adult audience, which is great to see. I mean, we had to deal with Shakespeare in thing. I would have rather have read like a comic book instead of Shakespeare in high school. Like, oh, geez. But my English teacher always used to say, if you don't understand Shakespeare, you're going to be saying the phrase, "Would you like fries with that?" So that kind of stuck with me. So, it is what it is. But you're working in multimedia, you're doing writing, you're doing YouTube, bringing your passion in as a profession, because it takes time to edit, it takes time to research, it takes time to put all this together. Do you enjoy the views, the downloads, the analytics side of things when it comes to seeing if your content does well or not? Or are you just happy that you're putting together a complete package when it comes to your channel and your videos?
Well, yeah, I'm very happy when my work comes out, and I'm really proud of it. But of course, I love when the number goes up. It's great. It means that I can maybe even have a side hustle, make money on the side. It means that other people are enjoying my content. It's validation for me that the ideas in my head are as good as I think they are, But, sometimes they also fall flat. But the important part is to just do what you think is the best and move forward with it.
So in terms of promotion, like that's always been a huge factor when it comes to promoting a channel or promoting your books or promoting your content, whatever the case may be. How have you engaged with readers and fans of your work, or just trying to get the word out there and that doesn't feel like shouting into the void?
Yeah, promotion is definitely one of the hardest parts because, everyone hates getting an ad. And that's basically what I have to do every time a video comes out. I have to go to Reddit, I have to go to Facebook, I have some Discord channels that I'm in. I have to just push it and be like, hey, come check this out. Please come check this out. It's really good, I promise. And, sometimes I got to go to book fairs and try and push stuff. And, promotion is probably the hardest part because everyone's trying to promote these days. Everything is a brand. Everyone has a gimmick and an angle. And I'm just like one guy working a pretty standard job trying to do this on the side and make my own way.
It's got to be tough if you've been working at this for like 2 to 5 years or 10 years or whatever the case may be. Like, does it wear on you, or do you get excited still doing this? Like, are you at the burnout stage or no?
I don't think I'm at burnout. No, I think one of the things that does help is you got to switch things up a little bit. Part of that is why I went from comics to prose, I think, is, I had written like a ton of comic scripts. And like I said, I was at the point where, I really don't have the money to be shelling out for artists to make a short comic that will go into an anthology, and then maybe I'll make a few bucks off of it, but I just can't. It's not feasible right now. And so that was a good way to pivot. YouTube is also just a way to get your voice out there. And it's another way for me to pivot. I can put promotions. If I'm in an anthology, I can show, hey, I'm here. I think it's good to kind of be a jack of all trades, to have experience in all kinds of fields, because it will help you out. And the more places you have your digital fingerprints, the better for you.
Well, you talk about reading or watching anime or reading manga or anything like that. A friend of mine who's 10 years younger than me, I work on film sets. So he's like, oh, you got to read, he gave me an app or whatever. And so I have a ton of these like manhwas and mangas and everything like that. So I'm like reading everything from isekais to reincarnations to action to whatever. And the stories that I'm reading in Korean and Japanese and Chinese, mangas, whatever the terminology is for that.
Manhwas.
Thank you. Yes. Whatever I'm reading in there, there's something that feels different than an American style comic. It's always been a matter of where the action feels faster, the character interaction feels just a little deeper. There's more of a familiar connection to things. So, there's a ton of great content out there that I just think especially if translated correctly, it works really well in their favor, because then they're like, oh, I really want to purchase this, or I want to actually, instead of reading this online, I want to actually have a physical copy of this. I mean, is it the same for yourself as well too?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Western comics and I guess Eastern comics in general, just completely different. It's not just a different vibe. It's different production style, different levels of popularity, different sources of inspiration. Like a lot of early comic books came out of like pulp novels.
Sure.
But a lot of manga came out of like Disney films. Osamu Tezuka, the guy who did like Astro Boy, was a huge, massive fan of Disney. People call Hayao Miyazaki the Disney of anime, but Osamu Tezuka is the Disney of manga. And you can see that they just have like very different ideas. Like manga likes things to be cute and rounder and a little more friendly, a little more goofier. Whereas Americans, I think we're a little embarrassed by that kind of thing. We like things a little grittier, a little tougher, a little more square jawed. One very funny difference is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Kirby games from Nintendo, like the little pink guy. In Japan, if you look at the box art, everything's very shiny and cheery. And then when you put the American box art, almost every time they make Kirby scowl. I guess it's to make this little pink puffball look just a smidge more mature.
Wow.
And it's kind of silly when you think about it. If you ever want like a big difference between how cultures like see things, look up like an American movie poster or box art or something like that, and then look up the Japanese version. It's wild. It's so much different.
Like the Star Wars one immediately comes to mind. You have Drew's shoot, I can't remember his last name. The those brothers that were creating the artwork for all of the classic, LucasArts films, like from Indiana Jones to Star Wars, everything like that.
Yeah.
You look at the Japanese version, and they're just as beautiful. It hits differently.
Yeah. I think Japan is more comfortable with color and exaggerated designs and more exaggerated expressions, whereas America tends to like things very clean and sharp and almost angular. It's very different.
And if you go into the color theory aspect of things, a lot of the Americanized posters for these films are either orange or blue, and it's just just a combination, or a combination of both, for that matter. It's like, just give me a nice black background with some cool designs, and away you go. Like, take inspiration from comic art, comic cover art, and make a poster similar to that. That'd be just so much easier, and it would hit home.
Yeah, it's like, for some reason there's just this like current in America of like being a little afraid of color. I definitely remember like probably like the early 2000s, 2010s, superhero stuff was coming out, but there was like this need to tone everything down. I think part of it was probably due to Christopher Nolan and his Batman trilogy, which I do really like, but that was definitely like an incredibly stripped down Batman, where like, this is real, this is real, this is gritty, this isn't like cartoony. And then if you've ever seen like the CW show Arrow, based off of Green Arrow, they started out like he's Arrow and he wears this black hood, and they don't call him the Green Arrow. They don't even call him the Arrow. They call him the Hood.
Right.
And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why did you even adapt this? Do you even like this? Like, there was just this period where it felt like the people making this content was ashamed of the source material very much. I remember specifically in both Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, there's a moment where they call attention to the characters like in comic costume, and they're like, haha, that's ridiculous. It's not charming. It's not at all. And I think that's reversing now. Definitely, like, Marvel is more willing to go into its fantastical stuff. DC under James Gunn, definitely more fantastical, more monsters, more magic, things like that. And I think that's good, because that's what we like about these things. They're imaginative. They're different. It's not like, if I just want some basic, guy in a dark suit shoots people, there's like 1,000 of those. There's 1,000 like thriller action movies.
Yeah. And then you have like the many iterations of, say, like the Punisher, or you go back to X-Men with Wolverine. What do you expect me to wear yellow spandex? And yet Deadpool 3, he's wearing a comic accurate costume. It's just like,
exactly.
At least the studios are willing to change, but I think the fans have to push for that, like to the point of either we're going to spend money on this, or we're just going to watch it on DVD or whatever it is.
As loud and obnoxious as us comic fans can be, we kind of have to put our voices out there sometimes to let them know, hey, like, you're doing this wrong. Stop.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
I think it would definitely be Grant Morrison. Around my late teens, early adulthood, I got into his comics. Definitely started off with, his superhero stuff, like his Batman and Final Crisis, and then I got into some of his more deeper stuff like The Invisibles, and that for me was a big game changer. It was like an introduction to like anarchy and magical thinking and mythologies and all this stuff. It's probably my favorite comic book of all time. It's just so detailed and layered, and it really showed me what a story or a comic book could be.
From a professional standpoint, you've been in many anthologies. You have created 2 short stories, and I'm sure you're definitely writing more, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future. So from a professional, and you have an amazing YouTube channel. Professionally, you are a success. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
Honestly, I wish I was more successful. I'm probably more successful than other people have been, but I just think that this is more than just about being the success. While I do, of course, want to be successful, it'd be amazing if I made like $1 million. But I enjoy what I do. I enjoy writing. I enjoy making YouTube videos. I enjoy writing prose. I enjoy writing comics. I enjoy reading them. I just enjoy creating. So for me, doing something that I care about and something that makes my life feel a little more fulfilling is the most important part.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I mean, honestly, there's probably a lot more failures than successes. I think anyone who's ever put out any writing or anything creative will tell you that most of your things will fail, at least in the prospect of gaining an audience or getting paid or whatever these metrics are. But I don't always like to think of it that way, like, oh, that was a failure or that was a waste of time. I just take it as, well, I did it. I went through a process. I learned some stuff. Maybe there's some stuff that I can learn to change, or maybe it's something I keep in my back pocket and then I can go back to years later. ICHI was one of those things. Crumple is something, it was actually like one of the first comic scripts I ever wrote. And that was probably, I don't know if it was 10 years ago now. It's been a while. But yeah, it's been a good while since I actually picked that back up. And now it bore fruit because I spent all this time building it up, thinking about it back then. And then when I pivoted into prose, I'm like, oh, I already have this pretty much ready to go. I just have to kind of translate it. So nothing is worthless.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as a writer or maybe another YouTube creator. Maybe you're inspiring them down that creative path. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I would say put out stuff that really speaks to you. Put out genuine, honest stuff, and people will notice it. A lot of the stuff that inspired me was not usually the most popular thing or the the most well-known thing. A lot of the stuff that I like is pretty like esoteric. I like a lot of surreal stuff. I kind of have a weird soft spot for like old obscure like foreign animations from like the Soviet Union and stuff, because they're just often very strange, very different. You get a different idea of things. You see things being done in different ways than they're done now. And I think that's what a lot of young people want. They want something a little different. They want something that they can latch their identity onto. And a lot of that stuff can help build them up and then build up the next generation.
If your life was a comic book or any medium, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
Oh my God, that's a rough question. The title? Oh my God. Maybe Calamity. I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life. Things go up, they go down. Things can be a lot of fun. Things can get very chaotic. The soundtrack, I mean, personally, I'd probably take something from like Gorillaz or my favorite band, Man, which is one of those bands that is known, but most people don't know. But I love them. Stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, Kyle, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
For those that want to support you, where can we find you? How can we help you, whether it's by purchasing books or whether it's your YouTube channel or anything else you'd like to promote?
Mainly, you can find me through my YouTube channel, King Rex Comics. I also have links to a Patreon there. If you just donate $1 a month, you can get videos early. That YouTube channel is also where I give information about stuff that's coming out, whether it's anthologies, full comics, books coming out, anything that I'm kind of involved with. So that's a good place to keep in touch with what I'm doing. I don't really deal with a lot of social media. I don't like going on Twitter too much anymore. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and to over 1,200 plus others on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. The podcast you can find at twogeekstalking.podbean.com or just search Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.